So Rededocs is dedicated to providing a safe, inclusive, welcoming, and harassment-free space and experience for all community participants, regardless of race, ethnicity, culture, and all that. So we are dedicated to providing a safe, inclusive, welcoming, and harassment-free space and experience for all community participants. We are going to welcome our speaker, who is Ivy Waloba, and also our organizer for Rededocs Kenya. We'll be going to talk about writing your first technical article or blog. So, Ivy, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ovinia. Hi guys, once again. As Ovinia mentioned, I am your speaker today. I'll just share my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Ovinia, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Hello.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Thank you. So once again, hi guys, my name is Ivy Waloba. I am the organizer for Write the Talks Kenya, and I'm so glad that you guys have made time to join us today. So before we start, I think I'll just ask a few questions. So recently we started our sessions on the study groups, and I would love to know how many of us are consuming rather the content that we provided. So I'd just love to know in the chat section, you can tell us what you have covered so far or what you have gone through so far. Or if you're comfortable, you can just unmute yourself and tell us. Brian, have you covered any content?
Hi, Ivy.
Hi, Washington.
Yeah. So I've been going through the stuff for technical writing by Google. I think I underestimated myself. Oh no, I underestimated the course, not myself, and overestimated myself. So it says it's only a 2 hours thing, but it turns out it's a bit intense. And apparently it's not something I can do in a day or something. So I think I'm going to need a couple of more days, but I'm hoping to be done by the first class, which is on I think 29th. But yeah, so far I would say so good. It's a really, really nice course, and I'm learning so much about writing. Yeah, so it's been great.
Okay, thank you, Mbugua. I'm really glad you've made time to go through the content. Yes, I know they say 2 hours, right? But it's a lot to take in. And I hope you join the team on 29th March. I think I'll send a reminder before then so that you get to join the session and learn from the team.
Oh yeah. So hold on. A question about that. On the course page, it gives the time in UTC +5 time zone. Would you be kind to convert that to Kenyan time as well?
I will convert that
when you're sending the reminder.
Okay, yeah, I will convert that and send.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Evan says he's mostly been going through the docs for developers book up to about chapter 3. Oh, that's really nice. That's quite impressive, Evan. And I hope in one of our sessions you get to share what you have learned so far once you're done with the book. So I think we'll have a session on the book soon, and then we'll get to share what we've learned so far. So that's really nice, Evans. Lang said, okay, Blanks has missed our sessions, and I will get to share the links to the study guide, I think before the session ends, or Esther, if you can pick the link, you can just share it on the chat section as we go. So before I start, anyone else wants to share what they have learned so far or what they've covered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided to do the traditional technical writing. I took that track, so I decided to start with that track. The document that you sent, I did the understanding your audience part and the planning your documentation. I also finished a talk by Analytics Vidya on how to write a good technical article. They had a really great talk on how to strategize and all of that. So I think, and I've also started writing an article from the inspiration right now. So I'll try and share that talk from Analytics Vidya. I think my friends will also learn a lot from that. So that is what I've covered till now. Yeah, thank you.
That's quite impressive, Ben. I was actually smiling as you talk. I think now that you've gone through the content, I think this session will be quite interactive for us, because I want us not to have a kind of speaker presentation. I want us to have a discussion together and get to learn from each other. And I'm really glad you guys have covered the content so far. So for those of us who are joining us for the first time, we have a study group where the team, or rather the organizers, share resources or a guide to help us go through the content on technical writing. So a guide was prepared by the team, and I think Esther is working on sharing the link. I think she'll get to share it soon on the chat section. So we have resources that are there, and we've tried to break them down into weeks for you to cover the content. So yeah, we will get to share our WhatsApp group, the Telegram group as well. Dennis says he's gone through the technical writing course and he's learned so much. He's completed week 1 to 3 and set up a Hashnote blog. Congrats, Dennis. He's still trying to figure out how to address a specific audience and the concise part. That's quite impressive, Dennis. And I really do hope we get to learn how to understand our audience and get the concise part today. So yeah. Once again, I think I'll just introduce myself and we start our session. So my name is Ives. I am the organizer for Record Docs Kenya. I am also a student at Dedan Kimathi. I'm pursuing a degree in electrical and electronics engineering. Besides being a student and an community organizer, I am authoring for 3 companies. I'm currently working on my first course ever with Educative. It's on Flutter. I'm also a technical author with LogRocket and CodeMagic. So basically what I do at Educative, LogRocket and CodeMagic is write technical pieces, mostly on Flutter, but sometimes I get to write about web technologies as well. My hobby, I really do enjoy hiking. And I am a consistent hiker. And recently I unlocked the 4,000 meters ASL gang, and I'm officially an advanced hiker. So yeah, that's it about me. So if you're willing to reach out to me after the session, or during your journey in technical writing, you can. I think the link is linktree/Walubwa, or you can just do a quick search on my name and you'll get a lot of resources on my various social media platforms. So yeah, so today, as mentioned, we will be going through the technical writing process. I want us to learn together. I want us to have a discussion on how to write a technical piece. So now that you know you want to write, or you want to become a technical writer, sometimes it's a bit, daunting or a bit tough to know how to start or where to start, or, how to put your thoughts together. Because yes, you have the skills, yes, you have the knowledge, but putting it in a piece of paper or putting it together in a document can sometimes be a bit hard for you. So today we will have a discussion on the writing process. We will get to discuss the preparation bit of it, the research bit of it, the organizing bit of it, the actual writing, revision, and then the publication or presentation. So we will start with preparation. So for those who have gone through the style guide, there are some tips, or there are some guides that they give you on how to write. So this is basically, for me as I write, this is where I put my preparation. So whenever I have a topic, say I want to write on, box shadows in probably CSS. So that is my topic. That is what I want to write about. That is what I have in mind. So the first thing I will do is I will think about my audience. So for the audience, I will think, who am I writing for? Am I writing for people who are beginners? Am I writing for people who are intermediate? Am I writing for people who are, advanced in the field? So I will call myself in a meeting and think, who is my target audience? So box shadows in CSS, who am I writing for? So after you think about your audience, that is when you'll get to know actually what to include in your article. And then in the style guide, we have, I think for the Google technical course, they have an amazing resource on the style guide. So they have resources on what voice to use, the kinds of sentences, when to use list, paragraph, the punctuation marks, markdown, the word count, etc. So I think we can just go through it together, just briefly, and see what it includes. So Esther, I need you to confirm if you guys can see my other screen.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay. So you can see the screen on technical writing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Google's technical writing course have some style guide material that you can look into. So you can check how to word your sentences, or the terms to use in your blog. So normally when you're writing, most people tend to say you're writing for people who, you should write as if you're writing for someone who's in grade 8. I'm not sure grade 8. I think grade 8 in Kenya, it's like class 6. So you should write for someone who is in grade 8. So as you write, you choose like words that are easy to understand, words that are easy to read, that are very clear and straight to the point. So, and then the voice, the normal guide is to use the active voice. So for the active voice, definitely you have to start with the actor, and then the verb, and then the target. An example is if I say Ivy trained Write the Docs community. For passive voice, I'll say that the Write the Docs community were trained by Ivy. So in your article, as you're writing, as you're preparing to write, you have to keep that in mind, that I have to use the active voice always. So you have to know how to structure your sentence in a way that the actor comes first, and then the verb, and then the target. And then as you write your sentences, you have to keep in mind that your sentences should be as short as possible, and your paragraphs should also be as short as possible. So most paragraphs are usually 2 to 3 sentences, which is the recommended length, so that as your readers get to read, they're able to, skim through your article as fast as possible. Like for this piece, most of the paragraphs are, I think, 3, some are 2. This makes it very easy to go through the article. I can get to know what's being addressed in this piece at a glance. So as you're writing your paragraphs, what most people tend to do is the first line, they get to write the main idea, what they want to discuss. Like for this paragraph, I can know the writer wants to tell me something about the verbs. And then in the second sentence is where you do your explanation. And then the last sentence is like you're giving your something, I would say a parting shot, or just giving your final view on the idea. So in this paragraph, if I was just skimming through it, I'll just read the first sentence. I know the speaker is, or the writer is discussing verbs, and then the last sentence, I know he or she is telling me to pick the right verb. So this way I know this paragraph is telling me how to pick verbs. So putting your paragraph as short as this, in this structure where the first sentence is the main idea. The next sentence is the description, and the last sentence is the advice or just the parting shot, makes your article easy to go through, skim if someone is in a hurry. So that is it about paragraphs and sentences. And then we have lists. So normally we have different kinds of lists, bulleted lists. This is a bulleted list. We have numbered lists and embedded lists. So when you're using lists or when you're writing your piece, you have to think of when to use a list, when to use a bulleted list, when to use a numbered list. So for bulleted lists, they are used when you're giving a list that has no order. So if I'm naming something that doesn't have a necessary type of order, for example, if I'm naming types of food, I can use a bulleted list. But if I'm naming something that should be followed in that order, I have to use a numbered list. So if I'm giving a recipe, I can't use bulleted list because I want my reader to do the steps in there as they are listed. So I will use a numbered list. And then some people get to add full stops at the end of their list. Some people don't get to add full stops at the end of their list. So depending on the style guide you're using, I think the most recommended the most recommended rule is if your list is a full sentence, you have to put a full stop. So like this one is a full sentence, they put a full stop. This one is not a full sentence, they did add a full stop. But for some companies or for some blogs, their style guides can be just put full stops on all lists, whether it's a complete sentence or not. So yeah, we've talked about the paragraphs and then the audience. You definitely have to think about your audience in whatever you're doing, whether it's writing, presentation, or anything. You have to think, is your audience, does your audience have a certain knowledge in the topic you're trying to discuss? So if they do have, then you have to give a disclaimer. If it's allowed in your style guide, you have to give a disclaimer and tell them this article, assumes that you have knowledge in this and this. If your article does not need some experience, you can just like go straight, because definitely if you're assuming your reader is a beginner, you'll have to go through everything in depth. So yeah, definitely punctuations. I think punctuations is the basic English punctuations. I think the only thing that can be a bit difficult to know when to use is a semicolon and a colon, which definitely you have to do more research on that and learn when to use a colon and when not to use a semicolon. And then Markdown. Markdown is just basically a language people get to use because most sites or most blogs get, I think they're static sites, so they get to use Markdown to present their information. So at some point in your writing, when you're writing for companies, you'll have to learn Markdown. So now that you know the style guide and you have thought about your audience, you need to definitely understand whatever you are presenting or understand your topic. So I've thought about my audience. I've gone through my style guide and I have my style guide at the front of my mind. That is what I have gone through recently. And now I need to understand my topic. So I've chosen, I want to write on box shadows and CSS. I have to understand what exactly do I know about box shadows. I have to know, is there anything else I can learn about box shadows in CSS? I have to do more research. I think we'll go through research on that. So from your experience working with box shadows, what kind of aspects or what kind of things do you think you needed or you found very important while working on box shadows? These are the things you need to note down before you start doing your research. So once you're done with your preparation, you can now go into research. So you understood that I'm writing on box shadows. I know with box shadows, previously I've worked with it, and when working with it, at some point I had to use to add box shadow only at the bottom, only at one side. such like stuff, I had to add some blur. So I understood that is what is entailed in that topic. So I will now go and start doing my research. So where do you start doing your research? You can start with official documentation. So if your whatever technology you're using, definitely it has some official documentation. So you'll definitely go there first, read on the whatever topic you want to write on. So you read on it. And then after reading on it, if it has some source code, you can just briefly go through the source code and then now go and read more articles on the same topic. As you're doing this, you're definitely noting whatever you're finding on a piece of paper or whatever tool you find is adequate for you to note, to put down your thoughts. So normally I use pen and paper. I love noting everything I find on paper. So I will go out there, read the official documentation. I write everything that I've learned. I go through articles. I write everything that they've covered. I go through the source code. I write what can be implemented with that property or class. So yeah, now that I've researched or done my research and I have everything on a piece of paper, I will go through what I've gathered. And then from my experience, I will try and put everything together. I will look at what has been covered and what I feel personally is lacking. So for example, if so many articles have covered box shadow, but most of them have just explained to us that you can definitely add box shadow to your HTML and CSS, right? Your web page, but they've not explained to me, because at one point in my learning, I needed to add box shadow only at the bottom of a view or an element only at the bottom. So that is what I will now note. My article will be different from other articles because I will include adding box shadow only at the bottom of an element. So I have noted this is how based on my research, most articles have just covered box shadow generally, but my article will stand out because I'm adding this different aspect that is not covered in the official documentation, that is not covered in other articles. So you've done your research, you've put your resources together, and you've highlighted the one thing that's making your article stand out for with the rest of the pieces. So now that you have your research done, you've understood your topic, you now get to organize your findings. So you've found some information on box shadows, and now you want to put all that information in in an article. So we'll get to organize your findings. You search, you put everything, you break down everything that you found. So in box shadows, I found that there are different properties you can use, or there are different properties you can add to create a box shadow. So I will put that in one section. There are various styles. There are various ways you can style an element using box shadow. I will put that as a topic, how to style. Yes. And then now that I have everything, I've organized everything, I will now outline my writing. So most writings, definitely, they are broken into 3 sections: the introduction, the actual topic, the actual discussion, and then the conclusion. So standard writing has 3 main sections, and you have to break it down in a way that as a reader is reading, they know this is my introduction, this is your introduction, this is your body, and this is your conclusion. But from how I write, or from most of the articles that I've read, most of them start with the introduction, which is just basically a brief of the topic. And this one has to be very captivating, because this is what will actually determine whether a reader will go through your article from the beginning to the end. So they will look, they will read the first paragraph, the introduction, and from the introduction, they will know whether this article will actually be worth my time. So it has to be very captivating. You should include whatever you'll be covering in that article, and tell the reader what you'll actually do, or what they actually learn in that article. And then if if the platform you're using, or if the style guide you're using allows prerequisites, you can definitely add prerequisites in your article. So I'm saying the style guide you're using because I know some companies don't allow writers to add the prerequisite bit because they're just assuming you're writing for beginners all through. But if you're writing in your own blog, it's definitely recommended to give the readers a prerequisite, to tell the readers what's expected of them to know before they actually read your article. So now that you're done writing the brief of your topic and the prerequisites, now you introduce the main concept. You get to introduce box shadows. You tell us what box shadow is, why it's needed in my piece, or why it's needed in my journey, or when do I need to use it as a developer whenever I'm developing websites. So you tell us more about the topic you're discussing, the box shadows, the element properties you can use, how you can use it, etc, etc. And then now you go to the actual tutorial. Now that you've told me what box shadow is, I want to learn from you how to actually use it. So this is where you do the step-by-step tutorial. You tell us, first step, first you have to do this, second you have to do this, finally you have to do this. So here is where you do the step-by-step tutorial. And then once you're done giving the tutorial, you have to summarize all that you have covered. So you give a summary of what you've done. You tell the reader in a brief summary what you have covered in the previous introduction and tutorial. So personally, as I'm reading articles, I don't go straight into reading the articles. What I do personally is I read the brief on the topic and I go to the summary before I actually read an article. So doing this, I get to know, does this article contain what I actually need before I actually read it? So that is why the brief on the topic and the conclusion is very necessary in your article, because this is what will tell the reader whether they need to stay longer in your piece and go through it bit by bit. So once you're done organizing, now this is where you start writing. Definitely, you've known you've pictured how your introduction will be. You've pictured what you want to include in your, brief, what you want to include in the tutorial, and what you want to include in your definitely summary. Will have to cover everything that you have covered. So now that you have everything in mind, or you have a structure of how you will structure your article, you start writing. So personally, when I'm writing, I do the first draft. So I don't get to write it in a way that's presentable. I just write. I write and write and write. I write everything I have in mind. I write and write and write. So I write whatever I research, whatever I think is important to include, and I just write them. And then after writing, I take a small break and then come back to the article now to rewrite again the draft. So the second time I'm rewriting, I tend to now structure it as I had in mind previously. I write the brief on topic, I write the introduction of the topic I'm doing, and then now I do the tutorial. That's definitely after I have built my app, if there's need of building an app. And then I do the tutorial and write the conclusion. And then in the tutorial, or in your article rather, you need to include illustrations, because as mentioned earlier, technical writing, or rather writing, is not all about text. It's also about visual communication. So how do you communicate visually? So you need to use images or illustrations that will help your reader understand whatever you're trying to convey better. Because if you tend to read articles with meaningful images, or articles with images that actually are communicates whatever you're trying to explain, they're easier to read, or they're easier to understand compared to articles with no illustration. And then also definitely you need to include sample code, because you're writing a tutorial, you're not writing a story for your user. So you have to include a sample code, and you have to ensure that whatever code you're including, it works perfectly, or it works correctly. And then as you're writing, try as much as possible to make your article correct, make it clear, make it concise, and make it readable. As mentioned, you have to ensure that your article is at the grade 8 reading level. So someone who is in grade 8 can actually read your article and understand it very well. Luckily, there are some various tools you can copy paste your article and test whether your article is on that level of reading. So now that I've written my first draft, I can now take a break and then now come back and edit. So for the first draft, you basically just get to include everything you have in mind, include what you think you wanted to include at first. And then at this point, at your writing for the first draft, I tend to say my first draft has no word limit, but for my revision, I have a word limit. So for most articles, I think they should be between reading time of 5 to 10 minutes, which is basically around 500 to 1500 words. And whatever tool you're using to write, they tend to give you a word count. And I realized that code snippets also are counted as words. So you have to keep that in mind, that my article has to be within this this number of words. So for most articles, as I mentioned, is 500 to 1500 words. But if you can keep it at 1500, that's perfect. So now as you're revising, the first thing you need to do, or the first thing I do, is after taking some break, definitely this is not immediately after writing my first draft, I'll take like a 1 day break or 2 days, and then I come back to my article and I read it out loud to myself. I'm reading it in a way just to get a clear picture of how people will perceive my article when I'm reading it out loud. So I read it out loud, and then as I'm reading, I get to note some of the things that I need to omit, some of the things that I need to include, etc, etc. So after reading it out loud and I've noted everything that I feel like needs some amendments, I will definitely now start working on my second draft. So I've noted what is missing, what needs to be removed, etc, etc. So I work on the second draft. And then the rule of thumb is always, if your article can do without a sentence, that sentence is best removed. So if you feel like a sentence or a word, your paragraph will still make sense without it, just remove that sentence, remove that word, because it's just, it's like, just try as much as possible to remove any extra things that don't necessarily make sense in your article or don't necessarily need to be there. I mean, your paragraph can actually make sense with this, without this word, without this sentence. So just remove it to keep your article as short as possible. So now once you're done doing your second draft and you're comfortable with your article, you can now go and share with your peers for review. So you're not yet publishing, you're sharing it for a second thought or review. So you will give it to your friends if you have a friend who you think is good at editing, or if you're working for a company, they have editors. So at this part, after you're done working on your draft, you will share with your editor, and your editor will make changes or suggested changes for you. So for most, they will edit it directly if they think your technical, the technical bit is okay. They'll just go straight into editing the grammar, restructuring sentences, etc, etc. And then if they need anything from you, they will communicate and you will get to re-edit the article. So sometimes when you're writing, you might find that you're writing a draft over and over again because your editor or maybe your peers think that there's something missing or something can be added to your article. So try as much as possible to take the feedback positively and then incorporate the changes and submit it for review once again. So once the review is done and you feel like your editor feels like your article is okay and you also feel like your article is okay, this is when now you get to present your article, or rather share your article. So most people get to share the articles on Medium, #Depth.2, or if you're writing for a company, it will be shared on the company's blog. So now that you're done with all the writing, you just get to share the blog with the world and they get to read your articles. So this is where you get to get feedback or see get data on how your article is performing. So personally, I enjoy asking my editors or asking my company how my blog is doing. So some blogs definitely will not do as great as other blogs. So I get to see why this article is doing so well and why this article is not doing so well. So I'll get to read the article side by side and see, oh, in this article I actually did this, and in this article I did this. So the article that has more traction or is retaining more readers, or the time readers are spending is way more than the other one, you get to borrow from that article. So you just get to compare data and see which article is performing well. So I think that is all I had. Yeah, definitely that is all I had. So I think I will share one of my articles right now. I will share my screen once again of one of the articles I have done, one topic, and then I want us to have a discussion on how you'd go about writing such a topic. And then we will review what I have done and see if there's any change that can be added. So I will use the box shadow example because I think this is one of my best performing articles. Estavinia, can you confirm you guys can actually can see my screen on Dropbox?
Yes.
Okay. So I was assigned by my company to write on applying box shadows, flutter box shadows. So before we go through what I did, I want to know how one of us will go about writing this topic, assuming you have experience with Flutter or assuming you have experience with whatever topic that you have been assigned. So is anyone willing to tell me from what we have covered, how they go about writing, applying Flutter box shadows? You can either raise your hand or just unmute. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, so for me, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
guys?
yes.
Oh, yeah. So for me, the first thing that I'll do after I've been given an assignment like to write for Flutterbox shadows, first I will maybe ask my peers or my friends who have once used Flutterbox shadow, how did they get to learn? Maybe they share with me some tutorials of where they were taught on how to learn or what to do this and that. Then after that, now I will try and go to maybe some tutorials, read some tutorials on watch some tutorials on how to do Flutterbox. Although yes, I know how to do Flutterbox, but I'll still go to watch some beginner tutorial on how to do that. Then after that, I'll try and gather what has this person centered in making sure that the user understood the concept of Flutterbox shadows. Then after that, now I'll go maybe read one or two articles, maybe one on Medium, one on Hashnode, and maybe one on Dev.to on the same. Then after that, now I'll try and organize my inspirations and all of that. That is after I've known what my audience is, maybe the level of English I'm supposed to use in my article and all of that. Then after that, maybe I'll do now a rough copy of it. Then after doing a rough copy of it, I'll now send maybe to the editor or whoever. Then after the editor approves, I'll now send the article to maybe a friend of mine who is not in the technical industry and ask him if he can get to understand what Flutterbox shadow is, even though maybe he's in banking or he's in tailoring or any other industry apart from tech, to see if even a beginner can get to grasp concepts that I've written. Then after that, now I think I'll go to the second copy of my article, then to the editor, again now to a friend who is technical and another one who is not technical again, to see what I can add, blah, 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 all of that, going through Grammarly, maybe checking if I have, I think now after that, now I can go and now try to give my article to the editor again to see if it can be approved. I think that could be my journey, yeah.
That's actually great. I'm glad you mentioned that you'll share your articles with someone who has a technical background and someone who has no technical background. And that, I think that is a very important point, sharing your articles with someone who has no experience working with whatever you're writing, because with editors, most of them don't have experience actually with what you're writing. So your editor will actually know this is a good article if they're able to understand what you are trying to explain. So definitely you have to share with someone with technical knowledge for technical edits, someone with non-technical knowledge for just edits on the flow, edits with the grammar. And then he also mentioned Grammarly. Definitely, I think you can use Grammarly to make changes on your article. I'll just show you how it works. So with Grammarly, there's a monthly subscription and a yearly subscription. What I do with my friends, we're 3 of us, so we created a joint account. One of us created an account and we divided the fund and we paid for a yearly subscription, which I think is quite affordable if you're several of you. So in a lesson, I think I will just pick one random. Okay, I'll pick this one. So you come and copy your whole article and then you paste it here on Grammarly. What Grammarly does, you can set your goals for your article. So if you're writing an email, you'll have to definitely put a email goal. Or if you're just writing general, you just have to check your audience. Is your audience knowledgeable? No, my audience is beginner, so I'll just put general, easy for anyone to read with minimal effort. And then for formality, I will choose the formality. For the domain, I'll just choose general. And then I want the purpose of my article to describe whatever I am doing. And then after setting my goals, what Grammarly will do, it will analyze your article, and then it gives you suggestions on what you need to implement. So I think this article has been edited already, so there are little errors. So I think we can just pick one random article from the internet and then see if they have errors in their article. So I'm not sure if any of you has an article that we can use to do a grammar edit. You can just share the link on the chat section if you're comfortable. We see if your article actually has some grammar errors. I'll just copy the first 2 paragraphs of this. Okay, this is not a tutorial. So I've copied a random article from the internet and I'll just paste it here. So I'll say for the goal of this article, it was a tutorial. So I'll just ensure that my article is for beginner knowledge. Okay, let me use Emmanuel. Okay, Emmanuel's article is a tutorial on Python. So we'll just copy that. Let's see. So the settings were set on, the settings are correct. So yeah, so with this, you get suggestions on the kind of edits you need to make. So you can go through the suggestions one by one. We have correctness, so it gives you suggestions on what you need to update. So for the first update, it's inconsistencies in the quotation mark. So I'll just click on update all, which automatically updates. And then it has some more errors on, the correctness that your article needs to improve on. So it's kind of like the tenses, inconsistent capitalizations, punctuation marks, etc, etc. So Grammarly is a useful tool that you can use to make edits to your article. So for the correctness, definitely once you're done editing that, you can go to your clarity. How clear is your article? Can a reader just read through your sentences and ensure that it's actually understandable? So we have a suggestion that this sentence may not be as clear as expected. So it gives you a review or a suggestion. So you can go through the review or suggestion. If you think it's okay, or if you think it still makes sense, you can rephrase your sentence. So it rephrases your sentence into a sentence that is more clear. And then engagement, definitely the vocabulary. Sometimes you might have words that you've repeated so much, so it gives you suggestions on the same. So you get to choose if you think that word will make sense, or that word would not change the meaning of your article. Like this, I prefer using the terminal. I can't use airport here because it won't make sense, so I'll have to ignore that. So you have to go through one by one and see if it will actually make sense for you. And then it has other suggestions on delivery, if there is slang, if your style guide does not allow slang, you can edit that. If it allows, you can just ignore depending on your, yes. So for the style guide, it follows all the style guides. So this one is all good. And then you can check plagiarism, because definitely as you're writing articles, you want to make sure your article is not a quotation of another article. So as you're writing, make sure to use your own words, so that there's no other article that has, you don't need to have content of articles from other writers, because I don't think it's fair for you to use words that they probably struggled or spent weeks or hours trying to compose. So you can always check if you feel like a sentence is plagiarized, or you feel like you can ignore it. Like I think this we can ignore, because I'm not using content. Okay, this is just one common sentence that I think one can think of, so I can just ignore this. But if you find you have a sentence that is probably using content, it's probably from an article that's actually covering the same thing as yours, you definitely need to rewrite that sentence. So yeah, so you can, if you want to change this, you can definitely rewrite this sentence in a way the plagiarism will, the checker will say that your text is original. So yeah, you can always check for plagiarism as well, etc, etc. So yeah, that is how Grammarly works. So once you're done editing all changes, you'll have a green check in everything, and your score will be, yeah, that one. And then you have to now to copy and paste and take your article back to your platform, and then now you publish once you've done making your edits. So yeah, I think that is it for Grammarly. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian, for that. I think that was a very nice overview of how we would go through writing process. So I'll just share what I did in this article. So as I mentioned, I have my topic, I did my research and all, and this is my brief overview of my article. So I didn't go straight to box shadows in my introduction. I did a brief introduction. I did a brief overview of what is there. So I mentioned about material design and the material design mimicking real-world objects. And then I mentioned, now this is where I start mentioning how Flutter allows, you should add some light and shadow aspects to your application. And then the last line is when I tell users, actually in this tutorial, you'll learn how to do this using box shadows. So I didn't go straight to box shadows. I gave a brief introduction of what I'm trying to tell the reader. I told them you need to know that it's actually very recommended to create a design that feels real, that mimics a real world object. And to do this with Flutter, you can use box shadow. So the reader knows, I need to use this box shadow because of this and this and this. So once I'm done with my outline or brief outline, that is when I go to box shadow. So here I discuss box shadow in depth. I tell them what it is, its properties, how to apply box shadow, etc, etc. So after doing the introduction of box shadows, that is when I can go straight into the tutorial. So I tell the learner, now that you know about box shadows, we'll learn how to apply box shadows in our application. So I go through step by step how to apply box shadows, how to add color, how to etc, how to add a spread radius, how to add a blur radius, how to add an offset, etc. And also you can, as you can see, I've used illustrations. I'm taking screenshots of the final look of my app so that my my reader can get a view of what they're building. So I added screenshots, I added illustrations. For illustrations, you can use various platforms. I think I use Lucidchart, or some people use Draw.io to create illustration. And as you're doing illustrations, make sure it's original content. Don't, okay, it's not recommended to use images from other sites, but when you do, you have to give credit to the author of the image, to the original creator of the image, but it's always recommended to create original content. So yeah, once you're done with the steps and all, my article was different from other articles because most articles definitely have this content. So my article differed because I gave a design example. I included how to apply in a shadow. I also included, there's one else somewhere. I also included how to add shadow to one side only. So I added two designs. So I added the applying shadow to one side only and applying in a shadow. So this is one of the things that is missing in most articles. So this is how my article differed from other articles. And then now I got to write my conclusion. So in my conclusion, I gave my reader a brief overview of what, how important box shadow is. And then I told them in this tutorial what you've learned. And then I definitely had to refer to the source code if there's any. So yeah, that is how I went about this article. And yeah, any question? There's a question coming. Please name the illustration site. Okay, so I use, I think it's Lucidchart or it's Draw.io. My internet is a bit slow, so I'll have to log in. So this is the site I use. I use Lucidchart, yes. And then you can also use Draw.io to make your illustrations. Yeah, Esther says she loves Draw.io. Yeah, for the article I just shared, here's the illustration I made. It's actually this one. So with Draw.io, they allow, they have a limit of diagrams you can edit as a go. So it's a limit of 3, which I think is okay using the free version because I definitely just need to edit one diagram at a go. So once I'm done editing, I just forget about the diagram. So this is the image that I included in my article when I was doing the explanation of box shadows. I mean, rather offsets. Yeah, this one. So I used Lucidchart. You can also use Draw.io, whichever platform you research and found useful, that is what you get to use. Any other question? For my writings, I use Dropbox, but people use, if you're writing, okay, I love Dropbox because I can write just plain text and then I can export my document as Markdown. Because with one company I'm working with, they need the Markdown file. And I honestly enjoy writing just text, not Markdown. So I just come and convert to Markdown, and then I get to share it as Markdown. Any other question? But some people get to use Google Docs. Some people use VS Code. Like the course I'm working on, I use VS Code to write it. I don't use Dropbox or Google Docs. I just use VS Code because we have to commit the writings to GitHub and then it gets reviewed. I think I can just show you what I mean with Markdown. You see, this is an article I recently wrote, and I really love the article because it gets so much traction from the learners because random people just get to star my repository, which was an article, and it's the repo for that article. Here is the article, the course I'm working on. So it's text, but it's written in Markdown. So this is the audience and prerequisites. The preview is in text, but it's written in Markdown. So we basically used VS Code to write this. And then as you update in your site, it appears as text to the reader. Yes, the recording will be shared on Monday. In situations where you have one passive voice sentence in a whole article and it only makes sense in passive voice, no, it's always recommended to be consistent in your writing. So if you decide to use active voice, which is the recommended, go with active voice throughout. So you'll definitely have to think about how to restructure that sentence to be an active voice. And then also one thing I failed to mention, that some blogs or some companies have this style guide. So as you notice, some articles I've written, I use you. Some articles I've written, I use, let me just show you, I use we. So as I'm working with different companies, Love Rocket, for instance, they prefer using we. And then the other one I'm working on, they prefer using you. So you have, as I'm preparing for this article, I'll keep that in mind, the style guide. This company recommends I use we instead of you, and this other company recommends I use you instead of we. Can I have a list of ways one can come up with an article? I think I'll just share my slides after that. To come up with an article, how I come up with articles personally is as I'm working with a subject or something, if I come across a problem, if something that I was working on was a bit hard for me or I really struggled with it, I can write about that. I think one of my articles, my first ever article was on that. I was struggling with some topic in Angular. It was the first article ever. This was building a bootstrap for Navbar. This is what I was building at that time, and I really struggled working with it. But then if I look at the stats for this article, the stats are crazy for that article. It's actually my best performing article. So as you can see, it has, okay, it's the second best performing. It has 7.9K views. But this other article for using the Google Translation API, this was an interview I was doing, and they required me to use the Translation API. So I wrote about it, and then it has crazy interactions. So you get to write about things you're working on currently or you're struggling with. Yes, Lucid Charts requires you do a purchase, but it has a limit of, you can work with it for free, in free trial, but it has a limit of 3 articles, edits of 3 articles at a go. 3 images at a go. So if you're just editing one image, you can create that diagram and then just edit. Because now I can create a diagram, but if I create a new diagram here, these other diagrams I can't edit, but the first 3 diagrams I can edit. There's a free version. Yeah. Yes, articles can have repos. So if you want to keep track of the edits, you can definitely do that, because now if I want to go to a specific version of this article, this course of mine, I can just go through the edits. So as you making commits, you have to make commits that are actually, meaningful, so that as you go through, you can know where you went wrong. So I can go to this commits, and then I can go to the source code. Okay, I did it the wrong way. So I can go to this commits, and then I go to this version of the source of the course. As you can see, the version is here, and you can go through how the article, or whatever you're writing looked like before you made the edits. The technical writing course on Google talks about using design features such as typography, spacing. How do you know about readability, and how do you, when? There's a site that tests readability. Someone mentioned Hemingway. I think I'm not sure if it's Hemingway. Yes, it's Hemingway. So if you paste your article here, you can get to know the readability level. It's actually grade 6, not grade 8. Yes, it has to be grade 6. So you have, once you paste your article here, you check the readability level. If it's not at the level that you desire, I think they have suggestions here, and you can use to edit your article. Scannability of an article. Okay, for scannability, so I'll just give you another example. I'll show you one article. So if I am looking for an article, I definitely did my search and I landed on this article. So what I do, I won't read the whole article. I'll just come and read maybe just one line here, and then I read the headings. So I'll just come and read CSS only responsive menu. I scroll, getting started, adding HTML, adding CSS, styling the background, styling the header and logo. And then I realized actually this article has something that I'm looking for, because the writer got to include headings. That's made it very easy for me to get a brief overview of what's going on. And then the sentences are not that long. So I can just skim through. And then here, there are many techniques to build something. And then here, for smaller scale screens. And then here, in this tray, we'll build a responsive menu, including just small sentences that go straight to the point. And then headings that are clear on what is going on. Like in this heading, I have adding CSS, and then using bulleted lists or numbered lists. So as I mentioned earlier, some articles, some blogs require you to add full stops at the end. So for this, like this one, they don't have a strict rule on lists. So if your list is making sense completely, you add a full stop. It's not, you don't add a full stop. But for my other article, this one, all lists, whether it's making sense or not, you have to add a full stop at the end. So you have to think about that as well. So for readability is just basically, or skimming through is just basically using appropriate headings that actually make sense, using short paragraphs that go straight to the point, where I say the first line is the main idea of what your paragraph is talking about, and then the other sentences are the description, and then the last line just a brief summary of what you've discussed. So for this paragraph, you can know this paragraph is talking about variables, CSS variables, and colors. You can get to know, this one is just explaining what is happening in the code block. You can just check, this one is explaining about properties, width and height properties. This one is explaining about menu links. That is basically skimming and readability, adding paragraphs, adding headings that are actually meaningful. Anyone else with a question? I think I've covered everything. In case I missed your question, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, Ivy.
Yes.
Now my question is, I missed the part of how you can push maybe your writing to GitHub. Can you repeat that, please?
I use VS Code, but I think we'll have a session. The organizing team for Doctors Code, they'll have a session on Git and GitHub, and I think they'll take us through how to use Git and GitHub, and they'll show us how to make commits. So what I do, I think I can just open the. Can you guys see my VS Code?
Yes.
Okay, this is a different article. It's not the same as the one, but basically what I will do, this is an article on Flutter Navigator 2.0. It's the one on Dropbox. So what I just did is I wrote it on Dropbox and I came here and converted it into Markdown. So I will come and write my Markdown here on my VS Code. And then with VS Code, you can preview your article. So I hope this will work. Yeah, so once you've written in Markdown, you can come and preview it on this other side. So this is the preview of the Markdown I've written. so you can see how it will actually look like if it's put on a site. Yeah, so once you're comfortable with it, you'll have to use some basic Git commands, and then you push the code to GitHub. So from GitHub, you can get to view the pushed code. You can get to see the preview as well as Markdown. Anyone else with? Okay, you're asking on hunting. For hunting, I think I shared some resource on community write-up programs. You definitely have to check out the companies that are offering writers program, and then you have to apply. So there's this repository. Yeah, Esther shared it in the chat section. So you have to come and check which companies are looking for writers, and then how much they are paying. And then if you feel like Alan AI is a company I want to work with, I'll go to their site and then look at the writers program. So if it's open or not. So I think I can just show you one on LogRocket. So you will come and identify the program or rather company you want to work with, and then you read on how to become an author and then the application process. So for the application, most of them, they ask for your name, email, socials, and then this one asks for other publications, and definitely you'll be asked to share your articles. So this is very important to have some experience writing. So you need to have experience, and then you share them here. And then you can also pitch a topic. Some will ask you to pitch a topic. So this is basically telling them what do you want to write about and a brief overview of what your article will contain. So various blog companies rather have different application processes. So you just have to do your research on that. Anyone else with a question? Dennis says GitHub has been, sorry, I think we will have a session on GitHub in the near future. Any question, any remark? So I think I'll just pick random people to give a remark. Dennis is asking how much experience is needed before we can start applying for this. So I will give you my experience. So for me, I started writing back in, this was 2019, I think 2019. Yes, 2019. This was when I wrote my first article ever. So that was 2019. And then 2021 is when I got my first gig. So your journey might be different. You might write today and get a gig tomorrow. You might write, then after a year is when you get a gig, etc. So depending on your journey or depending on how consistent you are with writing, that is when you will land your first job. So for my first job, I didn't actually apply. I wrote an article on Hashnode, and then one of the editors tend to go through random articles on the internet. So they get to read articles from various authors, and if they think you're writing so well, they'll actually send you an email. So one of the editors for LogRocket, they stumbled upon my article and they reached out to me and asked me if I'm willing to write for them. Yes, Dennis. I think we'll have a different session on this, but optimizing for SEO, definitely the style guides actually help you optimize, because once you write, if your article is too long, once you do a search on it, it won't appear. If your article is like the perfect reading time, it will definitely appear. Also, if your article has clear headings, it is such like stuff, I think we can just have a different session on that. The link has been shared once again, Rose. Collins, because of time, I think we can head over to our WhatsApp group. Esther, you can share the WhatsApp group link, and then we can have a longer discussion on that and share more. So I think for now, I'll pick one random person to share what they've learned during the session. I'll pick two, and I pick Mary Mutuku and Flavian. So Mary Mutuku and Flavian, if you're willing, you can share what you've learned today. Yeah. Miriwutuku and Flavian. So either of you who's ready, you can unmute.
Yeah, I hope I'd like to thank you, Ivy, and Write the Docs community in general for the session today. I've learned a lot, and also I am not a fan of the Markdown thing. I've learned. I think I'll be using the Dropbox information which you have gave for writing my articles, and I think in general I've learned a lot of stuff since the beginning of the session. So I'd like to thank all of the people who have attended and participated and asked the questions, because I've been learning from them. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Flavian. I'm really glad you're learning from our community, and I hope we get to grow together as writers. Mary? Is Mary with us? Okay, no problem, Mary. I think I can pick Jacinta.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, Ivy, for sharing. What I've learned mostly is the part about sharing your articles to people who are technical and the non-technical people, so that you get a view from both sides and you're able to know that your article will be understood by all group and your target audience. I've also learned readability, the Hemingway's editor, and passing your article through Grammarly to check for grammatical errors and how to improve the article more. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Jacinta. I think for Grammarly, if you have friends in the Write the Docs community, you guys can like just team up and then pay for a subscription for a year. So if you're like so many people, I think it will be cheaper. Yeah, so you can just team up with your friends and then create an account and make your payment and then do the edits via Grammarly. Anyone else who wants to give a remark before we end the session? You can raise your hand. Bratipa. I think, let me pick Bratipa and then we go to Brian.
Okay, thank you for the session. I've learned a lot from just the process of writing the blog, and also like even doing several overdrafts. Yeah, so thank you for the session. Looking to learn more.
Thank you, Bratipa. Brian, you can go next.
Yeah, thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Write the Docs. I have never written an article on VS Code, so I think I've learned a lot today on VS Code, and also I've never pushed any of my articles to GitHub. I've also learned that today, so I'll try to try and do that. So thank you, all of you guys, and thank you to the community for the great work that you're doing. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So I think we can end our session now. So once again, I would love to thank everyone for joining us today. You guys have been an amazing audience, and I really do hope we get to learn together and grow together. So once again, just a reminder, we have study groups. So Esther, you can reshare the link to our WhatsApp group, and also in the WhatsApp group, we'll get to share the study guide, so where you guys can follow what is prepared for you guys by the team. So I hope you get to actually maximize the resources or make use of the resources, and then we get to have a discussion on whatever we've covered in the future sessions. So thank you once again, and see you guys in our next session. So I'm